Spencer Howard was a man who seemed to have it all. Born into one of Fairview's oldest families, he had inherited not just wealth, but also a legacy of civic responsibility. Spencer had taken the reins of the family business after graduating from Dartmouth with honors. Spencer cut an impressive figure in his tailored suits. He was known for his philanthropy, chairing the town's annual charity gala and serving on the board of the local hospital. To the outside world, Spencer appeared to be the very picture of success and respectability. Yet those closest to him saw glimpses of a different man. His assistant, Bethany, noted his increasing distraction over the past year. His golf buddies at the country club commented on his sudden cancellations and vague excuses, and his wife, Laura, had confided in her sister about the growing distance between them. Reed Foster, on the other hand, was just beginning to carve out his place in the world. The son of Laura from her first marriage, Reed had moved with his mother when she married Spencer 7 years ago. Initially a sullen teenager struggling to adjust to small-town life after growing up in Boston, Reed had blossomed in recent years. Reed was popular among his peers. He had just started his junior year at the local community college, studying environmental science. His professors praised his passion and dedication, particularly his work on a project to restore the town's polluted river. Reed's transformation from a troubled teen to a promising young adult had been a source of pride for his mother, and, outwardly at least, for his stepfather Spencer. Friends recalled seeing them together at the farmers' market on weekends, chatting animatedly about organic farming practices. But beneath the surface of this seemingly ordinary family dynamic lay currents of tension and desire that would ultimately lead to tragedy. As Detective Sawyer began to piece together the lives of Spencer and Reed, she would uncover a relationship far more complex and intimate than anyone could have imagined. As the early morning mist began to dissipate, Detective Sawyer took charge of the crime scene. Her first order of business was to secure the area and ensure that no evidence was contaminated. She instructed officers to set up a wider perimeter, keeping curious onlookers and the quickly assembling news vans at bay. Sawyer's keen eyes scanned the exterior of the house, noting the absence of any signs of forced entry. The manicured lawn and well-tended flower beds showed no signs of a struggle or hasty exit. Whatever had transpired, it seemed to have been contained within the walls of the Howard home. Donning protective gear, Sawyer entered the house, the scent of copper and something else, fear perhaps, hanging heavy in the air. She made her way to the study, where the bodies had been discovered. The room, with its dark wood paneling and leather-bound books, spoke of old money and tradition. Now it was a tableau of violence. Spencer lay sprawled across his antique desk, a crystal tumbler shattered on the floor beside him. Reed's body was crumpled near the fireplace, arm outstretched as if reaching for something, or someone. Both men were clad only in robes, an odd detail that Sawyer filed away for later consideration. As the forensics team began their meticulous work, photographing and cataloging every detail, Sawyer turned her attention to the rest of the house. She noted the untouched breakfast dishes in the sink, the 2 empty wine glasses on the coffee table in the living room, the rumpled sheets on the bed in the master bedroom. Each seemingly mundane detail could be a crucial piece of the puzzle. Sawyer knew that the key to solving this case lay not just in the physical evidence, but in understanding the complex dynamics of the Howard household. She would need to delve deep into the lives of Spencer, Reed, and Laura to uncover the truth behind this shocking crime. With a nod to her team, Sawyer stepped out onto the front porch. It was time to begin the interviews that would unravel the tangled web of the Howard family's secrets. Spencer and Laura's marriage had been the talk of town 7 years ago. Laura Fosterson, a divorced mother of 1, had swept into town like a breath of fresh air, capturing the heart of the town's most eligible bachelor. Their whirlwind romance culminated in a lavish wedding at the Howard family estate, with the whole town in attendance. Laura, with her vivacious personality and philanthropic interests, seemed the perfect match for Spencer. She threw herself into the role of society wife with gusto, chairing committees and hosting dinner parties. Yet those closest to the couple noticed the strain that began to show in recent years. Laura's sister, Audrey, later told investigators that Laura had confided in her about feeling increasingly isolated in her marriage. Spencer, for his part, had initially embraced his role as stepfather to young Reed. He had taken the boy fishing, attended his soccer games, and even hired tutors to help him improve his grades. But as Reed grew older, the dynamic between stepfather and stepson began to shift in ways that made some observers uncomfortable. Reed's childhood friend recounted an incident from their senior year of high school. She had stopped by the Howard house to pick up Reed for a study session and found him and Spencer in what appeared to be an intense conversation in the study. When they noticed her presence, both had jumped apart, looking flustered. At the time, Zoe had dismissed it as an argument, but in hindsight, she wondered if there had been more to the scene. As Reed matured into a handsome young man, bearing a striking resemblance to his biological father, the tension in the household seemed to increase. Laura, once so close to her son, found herself increasingly shut out of his life. She confided in friends that Reed and Spencer seemed to have their own private world, filled with inside jokes and shared interests that excluded her. The household staff, discreet as they were, couldn't help but notice changes in the family dynamic. The housekeeper, Mrs. Abernathy, recalled overhearing hushed arguments between Laura and Spencer, with Reed's name mentioned more than once. She also noted that Reed had taken to spending more time at the house rather than going out with friends, often sequestered in the study with Spencer for hours on end. As Detective Sawyer pieced together these fragments of the Howard family life, she began to see the outline of a story far more complex than a simple domestic dispute. As the investigation progressed, Detective Sawyer and her team began to peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding the Howard family. Their first breakthrough came from an unexpected source: the family's smart home system. Tech Specialist Officer Ravi Patel discovered that the house's security cameras, while not covering the interior spaces, had captured some intriguing footage. On the night of the murders, the exterior cameras showed Laura leaving the house at 7:30 p.m., her posture tense and movements hurried. More significantly, the cameras never recorded her return. This discovery led Sawyer to dig deeper into the digital lives of the victims. With a warrant in hand, she tasked Patel with examining the computers and phones belonging to Spencer and Reed. What they found was a treasure trove of hidden communications. On Spencer's work computer, buried deep in encrypted files, was a folder labeled Investments. But instead of financial documents, it contained hundreds of photos of Reed, some innocent, others far more intimate. There were also logs of text conversations between Spencer and Reed, dating back nearly 2 years, filled with coded language and veiled references to secret meetings. Reed's phone yielded even more damning evidence. Hidden behind a secure app disguised as a calculator were dozens of voice messages from Spencer. In these recordings, Spencer's usually confident voice was soft, almost vulnerable as he professed his love for Reed and his torment over their forbidden relationship. As news of these discoveries spread through the police department, officers who had known Spencer for years were left reeling. How could the man they thought they knew, a pillar of the community, a devoted husband, a caring stepfather, have been living such a double life? Witness testimonies began to take on new meaning in light of these revelations. Zoe Lawson's account of the tense scene she had witnessed years ago now seemed like a possible close call, a near discovery of the illicit relationship. Mrs. Abernathy's recollections of hushed arguments and long hours spent in the study painted a picture of a household teetering on the brink of implosion. But perhaps the most chilling piece of evidence came from Reed's best friend, Axel Rodriguez. In a tearful interview, Axel revealed that Reed had confided in him just a week before his death. Reed had been planning to end things with Spencer, saying he couldn't live with the guilt anymore. He had even mentioned the possibility of telling his mother everything. As Detective Sawyer compiled this mountain of evidence, she couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The secrets unearthed painted a picture of a family torn apart by forbidden passion and looming exposure. But they still didn't answer the most pressing question: who had killed Spencer and Reed, and why? The first hints of their forbidden attraction could be traced back to a family vacation in the Bahamas. A series of text messages following the trip revealed a growing emotional intimacy between stepfather and stepson, filled with inside jokes and veiled references. Their physical relationship seemed to have started a few months later, coinciding with a period when Laura was away on a 2-week charity mission in Haiti. Spencer and Reed's messages during this time were laden with anticipation and, later, expressions of guilt mixed with declarations of undeniable attraction. From that point on, the affair was conducted with meticulous care to avoid detection. They communicated primarily through encrypted apps, used code words to arrange meetings, and took advantage of Laura's frequent charity engagements to spend time together. Spencer went to great lengths to create opportunities for intimacy. He began working from home more often, citing a need for quiet to focus on important projects. He encouraged Reed to take online classes, ostensibly to save money on commuting, but effectively keeping him closer to home. He even renovated the study, adding soundproofing under the guise of creating a better work environment. To the outside world, their closeness was explained as a heartwarming example of a stepdad and stepson bonding. Spencer took Reed to exclusive social events, introducing him to influential people in the guise of mentorship. But there were close calls. Once, Laura had nearly walked in on them in a compromising position, saved only by the creak of a floorboard that gave them a moment's warning. Another time, a housemaid had found one of Reed's shirts in Spencer's study and questioned its presence, leading Spencer to hastily explain it away as laundry he was planning to donate. As the affair progressed, both Spencer and Reed became increasingly skilled at leading double lives. They maintained their public personas, Spencer the respected businessman and community leader, Reed the promising student and environmental activist, while nurturing their secret passion behind closed doors. But as with all secrets, the weight of their deception was beginning to take its toll, setting the stage for the tragedy that was to come. As the investigation continued, Detective Sawyer turned her attention to Laura Howard. The grieving widow and mother had initially been treated as a victim, but the revelation of the affair between her husband and son cast her in a new light. Sawyer needed to scrutinize Laura's alibi for the night of the murders. Laura claimed she had been at a charity event in Burlington, about an hour's drive from Fairview, on the night in question. She stated that she had left home around 7:30 p.m., attended the gala until midnight, and then stayed overnight at the home of her friend, Cordelia Westbrook, returning to Fairview the following morning to discover the tragic scene. On the surface, her story seemed to check out. Several attendees at the charity gala confirmed seeing Laura there, elegantly dressed and seemingly in good spirits. Cordelia Westbrook corroborated Laura's account of staying the night at her house. However, as Sawyer dug deeper, inconsistencies began to emerge. While Laura had indeed been seen at the gala, no one could confirm her presence after 10:30 p.m. The event photographer's images showed her in the background of several shots early in the evening, but she was noticeably absent from later pictures. Furthermore, cell phone tower data revealed that Laura's phone had pinged off a tower just outside Fairview at 11:45 p.m., contradicting her claim of being in Burlington at that time. When confronted with this information, Laura became flustered, claiming she must have forgotten her phone in the car. Cordelia Westbrook's statement, too, began to unravel under scrutiny. While she maintained that Laura had stayed the night, she couldn't provide any specific details about their interactions that evening or the following morning. These discrepancies in Laura's alibi raised red flags for Sawyer. What had really happened on the night of the murders, and where had Laura Howard truly been? As Detective Sawyer pieced together the events of that fateful night, a chilling narrative began to emerge. Through a combination of forensic evidence, witness statements, and digital footprints, she reconstructed the final hours of Spencer Howard and Reed Foster. The day had begun like any other. Spencer had gone to his office in the morning, while Reed attended classes at the community college. They had exchanged several texts throughout the day, their messages a mix of mundane chat and coded references to their secret relationship. Laura had spent the afternoon preparing for the charity gala, her movements around the house captured by the smart home system. At 7:30 p.m. she left for what she claimed was the event. The exterior cameras recorded her departure, her designer gown glittering in the fading light. Neighbors reported seeing Reed's car pull into the driveway around 8:15 p.m. The smart home system logged the front door opening and closing at 8:17 p.m. From there, the digital breadcrumbs became more scarce but no less telling. At 8:30 p.m., the system recorded music beginning to play in the study, a jazz playlist that both Spencer and Reed favored. The volume was turned up higher than usual, a detail that would later prove significant. Mrs. Abernathy, who lived in the guest house on the property, recalled hearing muffled voices and laughter from the main house around 9 p.m. when she stepped out to water her plants. She thought nothing of it at the time, assuming Spencer was entertaining a business associate. The last digital trace of normalcy came at 9:45 p.m., when Spencer's phone logged a search for a recipe for old-fashioned cocktails. After that, an eerie digital silence fell over the house. It was what happened in the next 2 hours that Sawyer and her team struggled to piece together. The forensic evidence painted a gruesome picture. Both Spencer and Reed had died from multiple stab wounds, but the attacks had occurred in different parts of the study. Spencer was found at his desk, suggesting he had been taken by surprise. Reed, on the other hand, was found near the fireplace, indicating he might have tried to flee or defend himself. The murder weapon, a letter opener from Spencer's desk, was found wiped clean of prints and discarded in the wastebasket. The killer had been methodical, taking time to clean up some of the blood spatter, though they had clearly been interrupted before they could complete the task. Most intriguingly, traces of DNA that didn't belong to either victim were found under Reed's fingernails, suggesting a struggle. This DNA was in the process of being analyzed, but Sawyer had a sinking feeling she knew whose it would turn out to be. The smart home system logged the front door opening and closing again at 11:52 p.m. This coincided with the cell tower ping from Laura's phone just outside of the area. As Sawyer stared at the timeline she had constructed, she couldn't shake the image of Laura Howard, still in her glittering gala gown, stepping back into her home to confront her husband and son. What had she seen? What had driven her to such a violent act? And how had she managed to attend part of the charity event and still return home in time to commit the murders? The answers, Sawyer suspected, lay in the complex web of lies, love, and betrayal that had ensnared the Howard family. As news of the murders spread through residents, the community reeled in shock. The Howard family had been a cornerstone of local society for generations, and the brutal nature of the crimes seemed at odds with the town's peaceful facade. The turning point in the investigation came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, 2 weeks after the murders. Detective Sawyer was reviewing security footage from businesses along the route for the umpteenth time when she noticed something odd. A gas station camera had captured Laura's distinctive red sports car, pulling in at 10:15 p.m. on the night of the murders. The timestamp conflicted with Laura's claim of being at the charity gala at that time. More importantly, the footage showed Laura emerging from her car in a state of obvious distress, her elegant gown replaced by a nondescript sweatsuit. Armed with this new evidence, Sawyer obtained a warrant to search Laura's car. The forensics team combed through the vehicle, finding traces of blood in the trunk that matched both Spencer and Reed. Hidden under the spare tire, they discovered a plastic bag containing the gala gown, stained with blood and hastily stuffed away. But the most damning piece of evidence was found in the car's navigation system. It had recorded a route from the charity gala location in Burlington back to Fairview, with a timestamp indicating Laura had left the event much earlier than she had claimed. Confronted with this evidence, Laura's carefully constructed alibi began to crumble. In a tense interrogation, she finally broke down and confessed to the murders. Through tears, Laura revealed that she had suspected the affair between her husband and son for months, but had been in denial. On the night of the gala, she had forgotten her phone and returned home to retrieve it, only to hear sounds coming from the study. Peering through a crack in the door, she had witnessed an intimate moment between Spencer and Reed that confirmed her worst fears. In a state of shock and rage, Laura had quietly left the house and driven to the gala, forcing herself to make an appearance. But as the evening wore on, her emotions overwhelmed her. She left the event early, changed into clothes she kept in her car for emergencies, and returned home to confront Spencer and Reed. The confrontation had quickly escalated into violence. In her fury, Laura had grabbed the letter opener from Spencer's desk and attacked them both. The act had been one of temporary insanity, she claimed, a moment of blind rage at the betrayal she had suffered. With Laura's confession, the case seemed solved. But for Detective Sawyer, the tragedy of the Howard family was far from over. The ripple effects of this crime would be felt in Fairview for years to come. The arrest of Laura Howard sent shockwaves through Fairview. On a crisp morning in early November, residents watched in stunned silence as Detective Sawyer led the woman they had known as a philanthropist and socialite out of the police station in handcuffs. As the date of the trial approached, both the prosecution and defense teams worked tirelessly to build their cases. In her opening statement, District Attorney painted a vivid picture of a woman consumed by jealousy and rage, meticulously planning and executing the murders of her husband and son. She promised the jury that the evidence would show Laura's actions were calculated and deliberate. Jameson Whitaker, in his opening remarks, countered with a portrayal of Laura as a loving wife and mother, whose world had been shattered by an unthinkable betrayal. He asked the jury to consider the immense psychological toll of discovering such a transgression within one's own family. As the trial progressed, a parade of witnesses took the stand. Forensic experts detailed the brutal nature of the attacks, their clinical descriptions causing several jurors to blanch. Detective Sawyer testified about the investigation, her measured responses belying the emotional toll the case had taken on her. The most dramatic moment came when Cordelia Westbrook, Laura's friend and alibi, took the stand. Under intense cross-examination, Cordelia broke down and admitted that Laura had asked her to lie about the night she spent at her house. The revelation sent murmurs rippling through the courtroom, but it was Laura's own testimony that captivated the courtroom. Taking the stand against her lawyer's advice, she spoke in a quiet, trembling voice about the night she discovered Spencer and Reed together. She described the shock, the disbelief, and then the all-consuming rage that had overtaken her. Tears streamed down her face as she recounted the moment she had picked up the letter opener, claiming she had only meant to confront them but lost control. Her anguished description of stabbing the two people she had loved most in the world left many in the courtroom, including some jurors, visibly moved. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned to the packed courtroom. On the charge of first-degree murder for Spencer Howard, the jury found Laura guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder for Reed Foster, the jury found Laura guilty. She sentenced Laura Howard to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As Laura was led away, the Howard family tragedy came to its legal conclusion. But for the town and all those involved, the repercussions would be felt for years to come.